Welcome to our fourth podcast for the game of EVE Online. We are introducing, what's your name today?
Well, my name is Maximilian Logos. I have played since 2012 actively, a bit more before that, but actively since 2012. I have been a recruiter for most corporations. I have been a director a couple of times. I have been an FC a couple of times, and I've been all over EVE. I've done everything.
Alright,
I like doing nullsec though. Nullsec soft null is my home.
alright, looks like you and I are in the same boat because I too love recruiting. I love building things. I just want to build my own corp as well, so it's like I already like where you're coming from. So,
Thank you.
alright, so I'd like to ask you a few questions about what your hobbies are, what your focuses are, things like that in Eve.
Yeah, go on.
Alright, what is your primary focus on right now?
Well, basically, I am a recruiter, which is what I enjoy. But that is more of a pastime, which I do during the times when I don't have fleet, when there's nothing going on. I'm also at during those times usually exploring. Exploration, relic hunting is my go-to ISK making. Um, uh, what I do basically. Um, I am really good at it, and it pays for my account. I haven't paid for Eve for 10 years or something. Other than that, when we have PvP going on, when there is stuff to do, stuff to shoot, people to kill, then I'm either FCing or I am usually flying an interceptor pilot because I love flying interceptor. I have 200 million skill points, and if they require me to fly a DPS ship, I fly a DPS ship, but I mostly enjoy hunting people and holding them and waiting for the fleet to arrive. That really gets my heart pumping.
Alright, we have many questions about what it feels like to hunt people. I think we can go to that first.
All right.
So, what does it feel like for you to hunt other players in PvP? You said it gets your heart pumping, it gets your adrenaline going, but
Yeah.
I want to go further into that, if that makes sense.
All right. Well, like I said, I am an interceptor pilot mostly. This is because I'm a bit of an RPGer. This is an MMORPG, and I've always liked RPGs. And I don't role play. I don't do that. But from the beginning of my game time in Eve, from starting off as a newbie player, I basically said to myself, I'm going to pick a race and I'm only going to fly that. Sadly, I picked the Amar race, which is not flown very often in PvP, at least not in doctrines, in bigger groups. And that basically meant that I had to fly Interceptor quite a lot because my ships weren't allowed into fleets. Um, that actually made me really good at flying Interceptor, and I really enjoy it. I had to build my own ship, my own fit over the years. I started out with a passive tank. I started out with learning how to manually pilot my ship, to when to listen to the FC, when not to listen to the FC. Then you get into using repair modules, and that's nice because you increase your survivability. And then eventually you get into using drugs because they give extra boosts. You might even get into using implants. I don't use implants personally, but that's by the by. Um, Hunting people. Well, I like to do. I don't know if you know what shotgunning means.
I've heard of it, but
Okay.
I haven't seen it in
Basically,
action.
it's generally a group of 10 interceptor pilots or more in a fleet. It can also be an interceptor only fleet. And what you do is you hit a system, and everyone hits a site. Everyone hits one ratting site. And if you catch something, if you tackle something, you hold it for the rest of the fleet to arrive, and then you kill it. That's fun. That's but it's way more fun to actually have it in an actual PvP contest because this is PvP versus PvE. The PvEer, if he gets caught, has no chance at all. That's
Okay.
fun, and it gets you kills and it gets your heart racing, sure, but generally they're not really a danger to you because your fleet is fast and they will arrive in time and people die and well, that's just but what I enjoy most is basically either the King of the Hill soft battles, where you fight for an IHOB or a TCU, which is a King of the Hill battle. There are these little nodes spawning all over the constellation, and someone has to toast them. And I, as a scout, have to fly around, look at all the nodes. Where are the enemies? Which ones can we kill? Where's the enemy fleet? Are there other scouts from the enemy fleet flying around? Can I fight them? Do I want to fight them? Is my goal to fight them and kill them? Or is my goal to, just report intel and basically relaying as much information to the FC as possible? But it has to be relevant information. I mean, I'm not going to talk about some random guy who's just happened to pass through the system. No one cares about that. The most fun for me is when it's small gang PvP or medium gang PvP, so like 10, 20 players, and then the other team 10, 20 players, and hunting them, especially after the fight takes place. Like, for example, there's a main fight going on, and then the enemy scatters. That's where you get the rush. That's the fun part of flying an interceptor pilot because that's when they scatter, they panic, they fly to moons, they fly to planets, they fly to stations, and I'm starting to hunt them and I'm starting to find them. I use my D scan. I also, a lot of that is anticipating what the enemy is going to do. What would I do in a panic situation? Where would I fly? Would I go to a moon? And keep in mind, warp distances in systems are important. If the system is huge and I'm in an interceptor and he's in a cruise and I see him warp off to, I say, for example, a planet, I will warp to that planet at 50. You can choose anywhere between 0 and 100. Okay, so I warp to the middle. But because of my ship, which is smaller than his ship, I'm going to land there first. So I'm going to wait there for him to land. And then obviously I micro warp drive in, tackle him, shout out on comms, guys, I got someone, warp to Maximilian, everyone come on. And then everyone lands and we kill him and that gets your blood pumping. Um, Also in bigger fleet fights, the actual soft warfare dog fights are fun, but when you're actually in the bigger fights, you have to pay attention to all kinds of things. You have to pay attention to what setup is the enemy fleet running. Do they have rapiers or Hugens on grid? Because those are fucking anathema. Sorry, I'm not allowed to use those verbs. Those ships are anathema to interceptors. Rapiers and Hugens have points and webs that go out many kilometers more than other ships and you have to be really careful when engaging an enemy fleet. If those are on grid, don't get close because you're going to die and there's no point in going close. Of course, if the FC says everyone go in and die, then you go in and die. But if you can help it, you don't want to go in there because you'll just die pointlessly. On the other hand, you need to provide warp outs for your fleet. You may want to get ahead of the enemy fleet but in line with your own fleet so that they can warp at a distance to you, land on top of the enemy, bubble up, and battle commences. Um, do I want to fight solo other players? Ideally, I would rather not fight anyone because my job is not to fight people. My job is to hold them, to tackle them. Survivability and holding stuff is way more important for an interceptor pilot than it is to kill them. Someone else will do the killing. I don't. I actually only have one gun on my interceptor. Does that answer your question?
Yes, in great detail. All right. So, my question was, how do you determine what fits their flying? Z killboard or
And I don't determine anything. I play by heart mostly. I mean, I have a lot of experience fighting in a lot of different fights. So I know which ship types are really, really dangerous to me, and I know which ship types are basically harmless.
alright.
Um, anything with rapid light missiles like Caracals or Drakes, that's really tough. Succubus or Phantasms, which have tracking bonuses, also really tough. Uh, like I said, Hugans, Rapiers, they have webs and points. I'm not entirely sure what the Rapier has. I think it's a point. Um, really dangerous. Balgorn or Nightmare, they often have a cap. What's it called? Not cap transfer. The other one, Nosferatu or something, or a cap drain.
Nostrafu, I believe that's what
Yeah,
that's called.
that obviously is really dangerous because you're instantly out of cap, especially against the bigger ships. They just hit you once and you're out of cap. You stop moving, your micro warp drive turns off, and you're basically dead. Um, but like stuff like hurricanes, where people are generally afraid of hurricanes because of their high alpha strike. As long as you get into range, or not into range, but close range, as long as you get close range to those ships, they're harmless. They can't do anything. The same goes for, but then obviously in the opposite, for a Kronos or a Varga. Um, they have really close range guns, which is awesome, great. But if I fly at 40K and I point them with a faction point, then they're harmless.
Alright. So, what was your biggest kill?
My biggest kill is a very long time ago. It's also while flying an interceptor. It was a Titan that was accidentally dropped by Simple Farmers, I think. Um, so they were basically bridging in their fleet, except they didn't bridge in their fleet. Their Titan pilot clicked the wrong setting and jumped himself. It was also the day I found out that an interceptor cannot tackle a capital ship, or in this case, a super capital ship. Because I was like, what the fuck? I can't tackle, what's going on? Really panicky, but it was all right. We had a couple of other players in Dickers. Lots of Dickers died that day. Uh, just bubbling the guy and kept bubbling him. And that actually brings me to um, our basically our most hated enemy. I know you want to ask about that too.
Yes.
Um, we actually called in our most hated enemy to get on this kill because we had not enough firepower to kill it. So we called on Pandemic Legion (PL), and they came in and helped us basically kill the Titan. Obviously, we weren't friendly, we weren't blue to them. It was just PL hunts these kind of players. We know they can be anywhere within Eve in moments' notice because they have jump clones, they have Titans, they have capitals all over the place. So we knew if we can get a hold of them, then basically they will come in and kill it because it's 100 billion kill. It's a huge kill. So that was my biggest kill. It was a very interesting experience.
Nice. So, is there ever any infighting with your group or any groups that you know about? Or has there ever been any infighting that you have
No,
picked up
not
on?
that I'm aware of. There is always some friction, especially in larger coalitions. Although I've been part of not this coalition, but I've been part of the Clusterfuck coalition. It's nowadays called Empire, and I was part of CO2, and not when they weren't rogue, according to Imperium, but when they were still part of the Clusterfuck coalition, and we had a very successful corp within CO2. Sadly, my CEO went AWOL. We didn't know where he went. I was XO at the time, so I took the shares of the corp and voted myself into a CEO position. And and then the alliance basically in during that time started to poach our members, and that was very annoying. So they were trying to take away our members while we were struggling, and they didn't ask us about it. They just started stealing members, and I basically took the corp out of CO2 and joined elsewhere because I was like, yeah, what this is unfair. It's not. I mean, it's not unfair, but it's not really nice to do. You'd expect them to support you in a difficult transition, and instead they start taking your members. So I took the corporation out of CO2, and we joined Lead 3 at the time, I think.
Gotcha. All right.
We're asking about PL as in our most hated enemy earlier.
Yes.
Um, that is probably the most hated enemy that Proviblock had. Proviblock or CVA was part of Proviblock, which was a coalition back in 2017 and a bit later on. And PL, when the new structures came in, back in the day we had stations and we had posses, but all these citadels were, they didn't exist. So when those were introduced by CCP, it was told that upgraded systems would basically have faction citadels. So the stations would be turned into faction citadels if the space was upgraded, right? So the Providence space was really, really well upgraded. I mean, Proviblock held Providence for years on end. So we had upgraded or the space, you know, with everything. Everything that was possible was on basically. And because of how moons were back then, Proviblock didn't have expensive moons, so the space wasn't interesting to other factions. Except when CCP announced that, we suddenly got the richest, region in all of Eve because we all got faction fortizars everywhere. Um, and then PL thought to themselves, oh, that's nice. We're going to go in and grab all that space and we're going to take all those faction Fortizars down and basically evict Profi block from Profi. And that was, yeah. Well, you can imagine that a lot of players from the Profi block coalition were very happy when PL imploded as an alliance,
Gotcha.
which they did a couple of years ago.
All right. So this brings us to our next segment where we just kind of talk for a while and get to know each other for a bit.
All right.
So I want to
Yeah.
start with what is the
Yeah.
most. Do you like to do indie at all?
No, no. I've done some indie. I've not industry as indie is a bit broad of a term, right? I
Right.
mean, you have mining and you have industry. Mining, I've done. I've done some moon mining. I've done some mining with corporations to help, ISCOP. Although personally, it's not my favorite. Moon mining for reactions, also done that. Although I have no clue about reactions. I actually dabbled a little bit in industry myself as a player. Uh, I tried to get into making copies and inventing on those copies, but that didn't pan out as a lucrative way of making it.
All right.
Um,
So I'm a blueprint collector. I love indie. but I hate the mining of it, so I have to buy my minerals and stuff like that. So it's one of those things where like I want to build stuff for free, but with the cost of the blueprints as well as the time to mine all the
Yeah.
minerals, it's almost like would you rather buy the minerals than to buy it? That's the
Yeah, plus you have to keep in mind that you have to do research on the blueprints, right? Because if you don't do research on the blueprints, you basically need an original blueprint because you need to have the ME and the T, I think, uh, research done, and then you can make copies of that original blueprint, and with those copies, you can make cheap ships. But every industrialist in Eve has already done so. So getting into it now is basically just, copying other players. Personally, I don't think it's very lucrative. I've actually encountered a lot of people, a lot of corporations over the years that have, tried to do industry and somehow seem to more or less fail on it because of that. Because they want to provide cheap ships for their members, but it's not cost effective. It's almost cheaper to just buy the ships in HiSec and just freighter them wherever they need to be.
right. Yeah, that's the issue I've been seeing. Like the cost of materials are so high that if you make something, you're pretty much almost breaking even
Yeah,
with the value of the ship, unless you're doing capitals or
yeah.
orcas or something like that. So,
What I've found, like I said, I've been a director a couple of times, and I've been CEO a couple of times, mostly due to the CEO leaving and me having to take over. But um, what I found out is that it's basically from a corporation point of view. So from I want to provide chips for my members point of view. It's basically cheaper to just find an alternative ISK making method. For example, to ask your corporation members, hey guys, we want to ISK up a bit. Do you mind if we have like, I don't know, 5% taxes usually. Do you mind if we do a 3 day stint every month, on a weekend maybe, where we just put the taxes to 100%, and then everyone can do whatever they want, and all the ISK goes into the corp. That actually works really effectively, and most players actually don't mind it because they get all kinds of stuff services from the corp. They get a jump freighter service, they get a buyback system, they get free ships for newbie players, they get free skill books, all kinds of stuff, and or they get structures where they can safely dock up and stuff like that. So most players won't actually mind it. A lot of sorry, a lot of the miners in Eve are actually like that. They do help with the moon mining for reactions, for example, and they donate freely. So the ratters are not opposed to ratting a couple of hours on a weekend for the corp. And exploration pilots, they don't pay any ISK at all. Exploration doesn't pay anything to the corp. I'm an explorer myself. There is no tax on exploration. So for us, it's like, oh yeah, we can actually help out and do, I don't know, incursions. I actually did that a while back for one of my corporations, and we had this 3 day stint where everyone basically just donated what they were doing to the corp, and I just went into HiSec and I just ran incursions for a day, and I made like I don't know 1.5 billion for the corp. Um, that is actually way more effective than anything else.
nice. Alright, so this is coming to the point where we would do news, but we've gone over the time allotted. So we're just gonna skip to the point to where you plug in anything you want at this point. Do you want to plug in your alliance? Do you want to plug in your corporation? Do you want to?
Well, I want to give a shout out, a huge shout out. We just came through a very difficult war. And I want to give a huge shout out for all the players in CVA and those that are blue to us that participated in those battles, as well as to all of our friends, especially Red Alliance, who also participated a lot in all the fights. So
Uh,
thank you guys.